Welcome back to Skyrim, everyone. It's been a while since we've been here, in this magical land of warriors, mages, dragons, and merchants. Skyrim is a war-torn nation. That, to many, is a reason to stay away. But to merchants, it's an opportunity for profits. Many venture here to turn a rare profit only made available through war, peddling goods, wares, weapons, armor, and when it comes to mercantile, all roads lead to Whiterun, the famed, bustling trading hub of the land. Situated in the heart of the province, and technically neutral as far as the Civil War is concerned, Whiterun is a haven for commerce, and as such it boasts multiple thriving traders, not all of whom hail from nearby. We have a Bosma butcher whose brother runs a tavern and hunting supplies shop down the street, the sleazy Breton Bellathor, who will buy and sell anything if the price is right, and of course outside the walls we can encounter the Khajiit caravans who come from afar to sell their own wares. And then of course you've got the abundance of locally born businesses, yet for all this business there's one supposed trader that escapes definition. They sort of wallow about like a substitute merchant, waiting for one of the primary merchants to drop dead so they can take over. Otherwise, despite claiming to have a keen eye for business, they aren't actually a merchant at all. Rather, they waddle around and peruse aimlessly. I am, of course, talking about Ysolda, and let's just say I have a lot of questions about her business dealings, for under the microscope, they're quite sketchy. Now, Ysolda's sketchiness is far from an unknown tidbit of Skyrim information, but it's still information we have to go well and truly out of our way to acquire. But does it run deeper than simply being a humorous fun fact? That is what I've come to discern. I know it's been a while since I've done one of these Skyrim videos, but join me as we get to the bottom of Ysolda's illicit secret. Naturally, our investigation begins with an introduction. We must make for Whiterun and meet Ysolda, and understand what exactly makes her stand apart in her chosen profession from her peers. The best way to do this is to get up on a sunny market day and have a mooch around the stalls. Sure enough, Ysolda will be out and about having a gander, which gives us the perfect opportunity to initiate a conversation.
Once I've made enough money trading with the Khajiit caravans, I'm going to buy the bannered mare from Hulda.
Immediately we're slapped with the aspiration to become an innkeeper. Ysolda wants to purchase the bannered mare off Hulda. She claims she's working towards this goal by trading with the Khajiit caravans. We don't get a hello or anything. She isn't much of a small talker, but we can ask her about her merchant aspirations. So, you're looking to become a merchant?
Before my ma and Da passed, I told them that one day I'd become the best trader in Skyrim. I met one of the caravan leaders, Madran. He said he'd help me get started if I could bring him a mammoth's tusk. Easier said than done.
You see, I've always wanted to be smashed into low orbit by a giant. Maybe I can be of assistance.
You'd do that? If you find one, I could teach you a thing or two about trading. Help you get a fair bargain in the future?
And just like that, we're immediately looped into assisting the woman. She gave us a story about how her parents passed and how she needs a mammoth tusk for her Khajiit mentor. Now, Nords are naturally distrusting of outsiders, so it's interesting that this one is under the tutelage of a particular Khajiit. Across Tamriel, the Khajiit are stigmatized, and in Skyrim, the trade caravans aren't even allowed within the walls of the cities. And sure enough, outside of Whiterun, we can find an example of this, a Khajiit caravan, just outside the city walls, waiting for somebody to trade with. However, this one is not run by Madran, rather Risard. Risard personally covers the trade route from Whiterun to Markarth, but Madran does exist in the game, except he covers the route from Windhelm to Solitude. So Ysolda goes quite a bit out of her way to deal with this specific cat, unless of course all the caravans cycle all of the cities just in differing orders. And that's the thing with the Elder Scrolls, the information the game makes available versus what's actually canon can differ. Anyway, back to the Khajiit stigma. They are a beast race, which makes them quite outlandish to both mer and men. The natural agility and ability to see in the dark gives them the potential to be particularly adept at thievery and assassination. Therefore, they're frequently stereotyped as untrustworthy. As a result of being stereotyped as untrustworthy by much of Tamriel, finding an honest living outside their homeland of elsewhere can prove to be impossible. Simply put, they are perceived to be criminals even if they are not. And for some, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. This struggle is best summarized by the leader of the caravan that runs from Dawnstar to Riften.
So many refuse to talk to us. They call us thieves and smugglers. I am glad to see that you are not such a one.
Have you had trouble with the locals?
Mostly, it is the Nords. They do not like outsiders in their land, and so we are forbidden to enter their cities. When they look upon us, they see only pickpockets and skooma dealers. It is most unfair, but we do our best to ignore them.
I don't suspect the skooma you are selling is doing you any favours, but you get the idea. The Khajiit are quite the stigmatised lot, particularly by the distrustful Nords. So it's interesting Ysolda has a different perspective of them. You mentioned the trading caravans.
Yeah, these Khajiit make a living traveling the roads and selling their wares. It's got to be tough. Skyrim's a hard enough land when you've got a roof over your head. Worst thing is, nobody wants them in the cities. Nobody trusts them.
Why not?
Reputation mostly. A lot of Khajiit turn to smuggling and thievery to get by. A few bad apples spoil the bunch. You know how it is.
And what about you? Do you trust them?
Matter of fact, I do. They've been fair enough with me, far as I can tell. And a Nord knows a liar when she sees one.
It's fair to say Ysolda is an advocate for the Khajiit, and seeks to learn from them, specifically Madran, whom in our interactions with makes no mention of Ysolda. However, a key factor of their bargain is Ysolda needs to present Madran with a mammoth tusk first. So I bought one off him. He will never notice. Here, your mammoth tusk.
Thank you. This should turn that old cat's gaze. Maybe I'll be able to become a caravaneer myself one day. As promised, let me show you a thing or two about bargaining. Don't want some shifty merchant giving you a raw trade.
So we just got bartering knowledge from somebody seeking to learn about bartering, and we're just supposed to accept that Ysolda has that information were that story the truth. If Ysolda's speechcraft is so adept she can teach another, what does she actually need the Khajiit caravans for? I don't mean to suggest that the miscellaneous quests of a Bethesda game dare not to make sense is surprising, but 2 + 2 is getting us 3 right now. Something is not adding up. Ysolda seems to occupy 2 roles at the same time. That of the aspiring merchant with lots to learn, yet simultaneously in other dialogue, she seems more accomplished. And yet while occupying both the role of a trader and an aspiring trader, she won't trade with us at all. We don't know exactly what it is she sells, only that she primarily deals with the Khajiit caravans, and needed a mammoth tusk, of course, to appease one such Khajiit, one who doesn't actually venture anywhere near Whiterun. As peculiar as it sounds, it can be explained away with nuance. She may very well be a capable trader, a businesswoman, but just needs more knowledge and believes the Khajiit hold it. She may very well be savvy, but still learning. After all, she is in Whiterun. When it comes to places to trade, here there's always a bigger fish. Being simply competent or above average in competence won't guarantee survival in this market. In Ysolda's own words, she is far from an expert.
I spend a lot of time at the market stall so I can learn the merchant's trade. I need more experience if I'm going to run an inn someday.
However, that dream of purchasing the bannered mare from Hulda appears closer to reality from Hulda's perspective.
I enjoy this work well enough, but I'm ready to retire. I've been thinking of selling the inn to Ysolda.
So which is it? Does Ysolda want to become a caravaneer or an innkeeper? Or is there a bit of both going on? You see, in the event that Hulda, the owner of the bannered mare, dies, she'll take over. But in the event the owner of Bellathor's general goods, the sleazy Breton Bellathor, dies, Ysolda will take over his shop as well. It would seem the dream is less about a specific merchant lifestyle, but rather the riches that might come with such opportunity. Yet, it's unclear how she's in a position to take over either of these shops. Her home is small and modest. The interior, as indicated by this shadow mark, has nothing of value whatsoever. Of course, we can confirm this beyond doubt by jimmying the lock and having a nosy. It is perhaps the most depressingly generic Skyrim home you could fathom. If she's lugging around the wealth to buy an inn or a general goods store, in the event either proprietor either retires or croaks, she isn't stashing it in a gaff, because this place is so bereft of anything interesting it makes minimalism look like luxury. It's the textbook definition of an interior you'll never have any reason to visit. Top to bottom, there's something suspiciously vague about Ysolda. We're led to believe she both trades and doesn't, that she's both a shrewd businesswoman and but a novice, and we know she deals with the Khajiit. We also know she has two conflicting dreams. She wants to be an innkeeper, but she also wants to be a caravaneer. Basically, the less there is to a character, the more I'm convinced there's more. In Ysolda's case, no detail is concrete and often conflicts with another detail. She's so generally unspecific that within itself feels specific. On its own, it might seem like I'm clinging to half-nothing burgers, but worry not, there's more. There is one instance where we make a trade with Ysolda, although we do it while blackout drunk and don't remember it. You see, in the first tavern we come to after reaching level 15, we can meet a fella named Sam who challenges us to a drinking contest. The bevies swiftly strip us of our common sense, and then we black out, waking up in Markarth having wrought destruction, where we stole a goat from a farmer in Rorikstead and sold it to a giant, and to top it all off, we find ourselves in debt to Ysolda in Whiterun, whom we'd convinced to purchase a wedding band on credit from, so we could marry a hagraven, or as I like to call it, a rather standard night out in Blackpool. Nevertheless, this confirms that Ysolda does in fact sell things. We just don't have even so much as the option to ask her about it while sober. And it's interesting that she allowed us to pay later for this wedding band. Be a huge risk for an unproven business with limited cash flow. But more than anything, the interaction with Ysolda as part of this quest reveals quite a bit about her otherwise pleasant demeanour.
So, you're finally back. Look, I've been patient, but you still owe me.
Patient? How drunk was I?
Oh, what's wrong? Did the engagement fall through? Look, how about we call it even, as long as you bring back the wedding ring? That's really a shame. I was so looking forward to the wedding. You said you'd have all the most interesting guests.
Beneath the pleasantry, I think it's fair to pick up on the air of mockery. She isn't really asked about this apparent wedding falling through. She just wants to be paid. And this isn't the only tactic she uses to try to hold us to our end of the drunken deal we apparently made.
You went right out to give it to your fiancée. Don't you even remember where you left her? And after you told me that sweet story of how you met in Witchmist Grove, I can see why she left you.
A little bit of emotional manipulation. If we're doing the Pantheon, why the hell not? And if we try to persuade her to tell us where the wedding is?
I'm sure your bride-to-be will tell you when and where the ceremony will be. If she still wants to marry you when you tell her you can't afford the ring.
We get a splash of blackmail. Very nice. As for the rest of the interaction, I can only assume she defaults on taking the piss.
How could you forget? It was the sweetest story I'd ever heard. You met at the full moon, under the biggest tree in Witchmist Grove, surrounded by fireflies. It was straight out of a storybook. Decided to go through with it then. I know you couldn't have forgotten about your fiancée. You spoke of her so glowingly. I don't know much about Morvenskar, but it sounded like a lovely place for the ceremony. Congratulations.
I think it's fair to say the general pleasant demeanour remains, but I do not believe for a second she was being remotely sincere. To anyone overhearing snippets of the conversation, probably heard what sounded like a pleasant interaction, but face to face that pleasantry felt quite oversold. Witchmist Grove, being off the beaten path in Skyrim, likely means it isn't an especially romantic place, and sure enough, we're betrothed to a hagraven, so it's not. As for Morvenskar, where this ceremony is to take place, a quick visit there leads me to believe it's unlikely to not be notorious for being full of angry murder mages. So I think it's fair to say that when Ysolda said our story that we told of how romantic the meeting was and the wedding will be, she was being sarcastic. Maybe she's got a ruthless side and we're barely scratching the surface. I mean, while she can't be persuaded, she can be intimidated quite easily, so there is a limit to what she's prepared to deal with. But she demonstrates otherwise. She knows how to get the average individual to pay up. And while she might come across as pleasant, that doesn't mean she's being pleasant. So to round up what we have a vague merchant seemingly strapped for coin with a ruthless streak, whom we can't ordinarily trade with, but she allows us to purchase a ring on credit when shit-faced, only to sober up to being 2,000 gold in debt, and should we pursue the ring on Ysolda's behalf, heading to Witchmist Grove to confront our bride-to-be. After committing the world's fastest act of life insurance fraud, we kind of learn that the ring is not worth 2,000 gold. In fact, it's not worth anything. I get that it's tenuous to take anything in Skyrim or any Bethesda game too literally, after all this is a quest item. But 2,000 gold seems excessive even for this game's ring economy. So perhaps we can add using reverse psychology, insisting she only wishes to see the ring returned, to convince us to pay an extortionate fee out of convenience to the list of tactics we can attribute to her. But everything we've gone over so far has been periphery. At most we've established that she is a more than competent businesswoman, and maybe she tried to swindle us with a sketchy deal for a worthless ring. Her secret is not the fact that she uses pleasantry as a Trojan horse, so let's finally address what it actually is. Out to the west of Whiterun we can find a tree like no other. It's of decent height, sits in a lovely pool, and glows purple. It's fiercely guarded by giants and mammoths, and is known as the Sleeping Tree, which can be found of course at the Sleeping Tree Camp. There is no other tree in the entirety of Skyrim quite like it, and if its gentle aura is anything to go by, which of course is more prominent at night, I think it's a reasonable assumption to say it's magical in origin. How does this mysterious sleeping tree pertain to Ysolda though? First, let's acknowledge this spigot that's been hammered into the wood. It would seem somebody's been trying to extract something from the tree. But we won't have to leave what to the imagination, for in the camp not far from the tree we can find a cave. And within this non-spectacularly sized cave, we'll admittedly disturb a giant whom we'll have to kill, but then we'll be free to take note of the dead orc on the floor. His name is Ulag, or at least it was. He's not got much use for it anymore, and on his body we can find some sleeping tree sap, providing an explanation for what's being extracted from the tree, and a message from Ysolda. Before we make any deductions, here's what it has to say. Don't try to stiff me on this deal, Ulag. I can talk the Khajiit caravans into a better price than you'd be able to, and the guards are still looking for you after that little skoomer incident. Just bring the sap to me in Whiterun, like we discussed. Ysolda. So everyone's favourite vague merchant has something of an illicit connection going on, and she's looking to acquire this special sleeping tree sap, even going so far as dealing with a man wanted by the local authorities to acquire it. But what's so special about this gear that requires shifty dealings with unsavoury people to get your hands on it? Well, let's have a little gander at it, shall we? Supposedly it increases our health by 100 points for 45 seconds, but should we imbibe it, it also has side effects. We move considerably slower, and our vision is blurred like we're heavily intoxicated. It would seem then that this sleeping tree sap is a bit of a narcotic.
They're reforming the Dawn Guard. Vampire hunters or something.
Do you get to the Cloud District very often? Oh, what am I saying? Of course you don't.
And what does the Empire do? Nothing!
But rather than smashing this sap as hard as Ulag's head got smashed in by a giant, we can take the sap and the note and present Ysolda with our findings. I found this note on Ulag's body.
Did you? So Ulag didn't make it past those giants then? More's the pity. If you found any of the sap, I'd be willing to pay you the same cut I offered him. Better price than you're likely to find otherwise.
First and foremost, what can you tell me about this sleeping tree?
How the tree came to grow there is a bit of a mystery. Some say that when Vardenfell erupted, a piece was blown to the middle of Skyrim and from the crater grew the tree. I've also heard that it was a spore that fell from an island floating in the sky, but that just sounds like nonsense. All I know is that the sap makes you feel as healthy as a cave troll, but slow as a drunk horker. and that it fetches good coin.
Well, at least she's honest about that now the cat's out the bag. Of course, we can sell her the sap we have on our person.
Ah, of course. How much have you got?
And she'll give us 150 gold a pop for doing so. Honest pay for work of questionable honesty. Now let's get a rundown of what we know about Ysolda and Sleeping Tree Sap. She knows what it does. She hired a wanted man to acquire it for her. She doesn't seem particularly put out by the fact that that man is now dead. And if we're so inclined, we can become her new supplier. Also she, according to the letter, can sell it to the Khajiit caravans. The same caravans who all sell skooma, an illegal drug. And since Ysolda is aware of her Sleeping Tree Sap supplier's skooma-related dealings, I think it's fair to say she's likely aware of the caravan's racket as well. Basically, this unassuming, aspiring Nord merchant is a link in the chain of province-wide drug trafficking. Not exactly a righteous vocation. But before we damn her for her life choices, let's clear up a few things. Firstly, there's nothing in Skyrim that indicates that Sleeping Tree Sap itself is illegal. It's exceptionally rare and can only come from one source that is guarded by giants and mammoths, meaning in order to get a hold of it you need to have a death wish, so I wouldn't imagine it's even remotely as well known as the likes of skooma and moon sugar. The lore in that respect is a way off catching up with it. But its obscurity doesn't make Ysolda's little business here any more ethical. She's passing this drug she doesn't fully understand the origins of, never mind the full extent of the effects, to Khajiit caravans who sell it alongside skooma and moon sugar. The caravans are willing to pay handsomely for it, which means there's likely a demand at the other end, and Ysolda is more than willing to resort to hiring law-breaking bedfellows, so she likely knows the consequences of the circulation of Sleeping Tree Sap aren't good, and doesn't care. But a selfish decision for the sake of financial gain within itself is not a crime. But what about consorting with wanted criminals? And who's to say the Sleeping Tree Sap is the beginning and end of her dealings with the Khajiit caravans? It most certainly doesn't sound like it. How much of the less than above board side to their hustle is she privy to? If nothing else, she's enabling its expansion. But all we can definitely tie her to is this stuff. A sap with an array of effects from a tree nobody's certain quite where it mysteriously appeared from. Ysolda gives us two rumours regarding its origin, the first being that it came from the volcanic eruption of the Red Mountain. The second theory being it grew from a spore which fell from a floating island. And it may sound easy to dismiss as nonsense, but as a rule of thumb with the Elder Scrolls lore, the closer to nonsense we get, the closer to the truth we get. And the notion of a floating island would be easier to dismiss if there wasn't one in lore. This is Umbriel, a floating island from a pocket realm of oblivion that came to Tamriel in the early decades of the Fourth Era, about 150 years prior to the events of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, according to a novel released in 2009 by Greg Keyes. To cut a long story short, on board there were a group of sentient trees that were supposedly cousins of the Hist. The Hist are spore trees that grow in the deepest swamps of Black Marsh, where the Argonians share a deep connection with them. Interestingly, one of their methods of communication is their sap. When an Argonian ingests the sap, they are ingesting the Hist's spirit, allowing the Hist to communicate with them through visions. The sap is also known to boast other benefits, but it's also not entirely safe, and there are some unwanted side effects as well. That's a lot of similarity with a magical purple glowing tree that appeared out of nowhere and has narcotic sap. Is that enough to definitively say that is what this stuff is? Of course not. But could this tree be an example of a Hist-adjacent sentient species from Umbriel? If so, the sap is the tree's spirit. That might explain some of its inebriating properties, but more than anything it would draw attention to the fact that, long-term, the effects the sap has on the body and mind might vary. To keep things succinct, the extent of the irresponsibility of the distribution of this stuff may very well be impossible for us to quantify. But one thing is for sure, Ysolda doesn't know the tree's origin. She doesn't know what exactly she's distributing, and what the long-term effects of distributing it are. The beginning and end of her interest is profit. So perhaps we should be thankful sleeping tree sap remains a rarity. The source is under the protection of giants and mammoths. Acquiring fresh stuff therefore requires somebody special, or somebody unbelievably stupid and unbelievably lucky. But that doesn't mean enough of the stuff isn't already out there. We can find the stuff being peddled by skooma dealers, but its perhaps most disturbing appearance is at Redwater Den, a skooma den to the northwest of Riften. Here, punters are drawn in with the allure of redwater skooma. But little do they know this operation is run by vampires. Also, they can harvest blood from addicts. And down here in the bowels of this hellhole, we can find a solitary bottle of sleeping tree sap. And if the vampires are taking interest in the gear, it cannot be good. Anyway, conclusions. Ysolda's a drug dealer, and she doesn't know what she's messing with. She may not be involved in skooma or moon sugar directly, but she has no problem peddling a legal drug, if you will, and knows full well the Khajiit uniquely value it. The consequences of this distribution, however, are unclear. So, we can issue some justice of our own, but she's an NPC. She can't die. So why not marry her and take a cut of the profits? After all you need's an amulet of Mara. But with that, I bring this video to its likely slightly overdue conclusion. I'd like to thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with your friends, all that stuff. It would be massively appreciated. And if you fancy joining a Discord server to talk about nonsense, you can follow the QR code on screen now. It's quite small, it's early days, and everybody's chill, and I've decided to do it this way instead of via a link to control ingress a bit and keep things from devolving into chaos right away. But look, with any luck, I'll be seeing you all very soon with another video at some point. I'm hoping to speed back up my uploading process. It's slowed and slowed and slowed over the course of the past year. I can only apologise, it isn't my intent to put 2 weeks between 2 videos, but sometimes it happens. But until next time, please take care, and goodbye.